This morning we're going to be back in Matthew. That's where we've been. But I want to talk just a little bit about, before we get into Matthew, I want to talk a little bit about the changes that are coming up here in November, on November 10th. There we go. And, excuse me. Don't get choked up this morning. I've had a little tickle in my throat for really all morning. We've been singing. I've been coughing the whole time, but I got some Gobstoppers, which apparently are like cough drops, maybe. I don't know. But we'll try those out. All right, let me see if I've got control here. I do not. Can you click on it there, Glenn? Just click right anywhere. It doesn't matter. Just click. Just right in the middle of the screen there. Oh, you're over there. Just go down a little bit and click. Just right now, click. There we go. All right, I got control. All right. Glenn is jumping in on the media, and I so appreciate that he's doing that. I actually think he did a great job this morning. Do you guys agree? He kept up with it. It was good. So November 10th, we are going to two services, as we've talked about. I've really, just the past couple weeks, I've been so thankful. A number of times I've just been thanking God for the unity kind of through this process as we've been talking about these changes. Just that there's just a real sense of being together on this, which it definitely could go another way where we're not together on this. And it doesn't mean that there's not some discomfort and some people feeling like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be the greatest thing, but we're together and we're moving forward. So I'm just really thankful for how God has kind of preserved our unity over this time of transition, and just keep praying that the unity will continue as we do actually transition. And as the change comes. So it's coming November 10th. That's our target date. We've said that we might move it back a week if for some reason we're not ready, but I think probably we're going to start on November 10th. So plan on that. The first service is going to start at 8:30 instead of 9:15. So what we're doing right now is going to continue as is, but we'll just start a little bit earlier, starting on November 10th. So if November 10th you show up at 9:15, you'll be right in time probably for me to start. Actually, you'll probably be in the middle of my message at that point, but probably don't want to show up at 9:15 or 9:30, as some of you tend to show up, or 9:45. You'll miss the whole service. So yeah, shoot for 8:30, and you'll be good. And then we'll start the new 10 o'clock service over in Grace Hall at 10 o'clock. And so this is kind of what it's going to look like schedule-wise. 8:30, the first service will start. There will be kids programs going on all morning. So at 8:30, they're going to do... They'll actually start in here at 8:30, just like we do now, and then about 8:45, 8:50, they'll break off and do like a kids worship time, which is pretty cool. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about them getting to do that. A worship time that's really geared toward them with kind of kid-friendly songs, and really, I think with a focus, Connie and I have been talking about this, with a focus of kind of teaching them how to worship God, how to express their praise to Him. And then they'll be playing some games too during that time. Then 9:45, first service will end, and I'm really, really, really going to try to end it on time, or even before that would be great, to give us plenty of time to fellowship in between the two services. So roughly 9:45, there'll be fellowship time. And if your plan is just to come to the 10 o'clock service, don't come at 10 o'clock. You come at 9:45, because that's when we get fellowship together, and before we go over and do the second service. And then second service will start at 10 o'clock. kids Sunday school, which is what's happening currently at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, will be happening at 10 o'clock. So that's when they'll break into their age groups and have kind of age-appropriate studies. Also, our adult Sunday school classes will be going on during that 10 o'clock hour. And then at 11 o'clock, the kids will have like a junior church time. We may change the name of that, but it'll be a time where the kids are all together doing kind of some fun activities together and a lesson. So that's what that looks like. The reason why I want to talk about this morning was to give you guys a picture of what it's going to look like, but also we need help. This transition means we need more volunteers in different areas of ministry. And so what I would encourage us all to do, this is something Janet said early on, and I agree. Basically, right now, we're here from 9 o'clock to noon, right? All we're asking is that we're now here from 8:30 to noon. Just add a half hour to your morning. And that we're all here together, that we're going to do this thing together, whether you're a first service person or a second service person, we're all doing this together. And if you go to first service and maybe adult Sunday school, think about helping out in junior church during that last hour. Or if you go to second service, think about helping out in first service. There's a number of needs, which I'll show a list here of some of the needs here in a second. But to make our morning not just about coming and receiving, but receiving and serving, doing both. Finding some time that you're plugged in and you're serving somewhere in the body, and you also have time when you're kind of receiving the truth and worshiping together. So here are some of the needs. I'm going to send this around. What you see on the screen here is what I'm sending around. There are spaces I'll start it here and we can run it back and run it around the other side. There are spaces to sign up. Let me start by saying that you're not signing your life away if you put your name on this list. You're simply saying, I'm interested in possibly helping in this area. If you sign up and you start helping and you go through a month or two and you're like, this is so not for me, bail out. It's fine. We'll find somebody else. But we need you to volunteer to get plugged in. So these are some of the areas that we need help in. We need a couple of helpers in that first hour kids worship time. We're starting to line up some people to actually lead the worship time and the games, but they're going to need some help to get kids to the bathroom and to separate kids who are distracted and those kind of activities, just whatever the worship leaders need. During the Sunday school hour, we got our Sunday school teachers lined up. They are amazing. But having a couple of helpers would really help them out so that if a kid needs to go to the restroom, they can take them. Just anything that the Sunday school teacher needs help with. These things are not things you would be locked into every week. Unless you wanted to be. They're kind of on a rotation. Actually, everything on this list is a rotation. It shouldn't be something that you are necessarily locked into every week. We need some help in that junior church time. Actually looking for a second teacher to rotate in during that junior church time, and a couple helpers there. We need some more greeters. We've got a pretty good core of greeters, but Kathy needs a few more. Kathy and I talked about probably the best idea would be for just a couple of couples to go, hey, because we need two every morning, just a couple to go, hey, we're going to be the greeters for this morning. And that's something that's, I think I put on there, just kind of a once in a while rotation, maybe once a month, maybe even once every 6 weeks. It's not a huge commitment. And it's basically just smiling and shaking a hand. I mean, it's more than that, and Kathy could tell you that, but it's pretty much just being nice. And then, so if you think you can be nice, you could probably sign up for that. If you don't think you can be nice, maybe not something to sign up for. And then the nursery. we really want to go in a different direction in the nursery. That's really been something that has been two very, very faithful servants in our body have taken that job on for years. I mean, it's been a really long time. We don't want to put that burden on just one or two people. And so we really want to move to more of a rotation where someone's serving once a month or even once every 6 weeks. And so if you're interested in serving during any of those times on nursery, just put your name on there, and we'll get you plugged in. Any questions about any of that before we get into the message this morning? You got a question about this, Jerry, or something else? Yeah.
You was talking about the nursery.
Uh-huh.
And if I can maybe learn it, like taking care of kids because I'm really good at kids.
So I'm going to anticipate your question and say, if you're interested, just put your name on the sheet, and we'll reach out to you. Okay. We'll get you plugged in. Any other thoughts or questions on that? Yeah, Luke. Fantastic idea, and the TV is already purchased and sitting in a closet. It's ready to go. Great idea. Yep, Chuck. What happens in the nursery stays in the nursery. I mean, if you change the channel, I guess. All right. That was good. All right. Let's dive into our passage for the morning. We're actually just going to be looking at 4 verses this morning, which I got to admit was a hard decision for me this week. I was planning on doing 8 verses, but the more I got into it, the more I thought, I really don't want to muddy the waters covering the full 8 verses that I was going to cover this week, because these 4 verses really do stand alone and have a really important message for us to think through and to take away today. So we're gonna dive into that. But we've been, the beginning of chapter 5 is the beginning of what we call the Sermon on the Mount. This is Jesus's first big teaching, long teaching in Matthew, and he starts those first 12 verses by just describing who we are, those who have repented of our past, wanting to go in a completely new direction that lines up with Jesus and his priorities and God's priorities, and those who want to enter the kingdom of heaven. That's really what his call was. It was John the Baptist's call: repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, is near. And then Jesus had the same message: repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Change the direction of your life, reorient your life to me. And again, this is not, Jesus' call was never to just kind of tiptoe in. We talked about this at a discipleship group this week. Some of the guys and I were talking about this idea that Jesus never said, hey, just kind of like me a little bit, or kind of just test out the waters a little bit. He was calling us to be all in on this thing. And for the people who decided, I'm all in, I'm going, I'm with you. We have this picture of these 4 disciples who became disciples by Jesus saying, hey, come follow me. And they immediately dropped what they were doing and followed him. That's the kind of response and dedication that Jesus was calling for. And so as he gets into this message, he's describing these people who have decided to follow Christ, these people who are a part of the kingdom of heaven, part of this new nation of the spiritual nation of people who are following God. This is what they're like. And he describes what we're like, what kind of a people that we are. And this morning, he's going to continue on that theme. He started by telling us that we're people who are disadvantaged, and God's people are the people who grieve and who are kind of the unimportant people of this world, who don't rely on their own self-importance. But they're also the people who have citizenship in heaven and in the people of heaven, and that he brings comfort in the midst of our pain. And that's why we're a fortunate people, a blessed people. We're the kind of people who hunger and thirst for being and doing right things. We're those who show compassion and mercy to other people, not condemnation. We're those who seek reconciliation, not division. And God's response to that, the benefit, the reason why we're a fortunate people is that we receive mercy ourselves and compassion from him. And that we've become his sons and his daughters. And we've picked up his resemblance. We start to look like him in the ways that we do things, in the ways that we think about things. And so all of these things in the first 12 verses that we covered last week, they were all identity statements. They were all, this is who you are as a people. They're all realities. And he's going to continue with that this morning in these few verses, just more about the reality of who we are. So let me pray for us. Lord, I pray as we get into these verses this morning that you would help us to see where we need to stretch, where we need to grow, maybe where we need to take a good look at our lives and go in a new direction, repent from that direction we have been going, and go in a new direction so that we can be these people that you've created us to be, these people that shine out, that impact our world just by who we are. Not even necessarily by what we say or what programs we put on at the church or whether we have, the 5 points of salvation figured out, but that we just are a different people and that will change the world. And I just pray that any ways in which we hamper that in our own lives, that you would kind of call us out on that. Any ways that we hamper that as a church body, that you would make that clear to us, and that we would choose to go in your direction and just be who you've made us to be. Pray this all in your name. Amen. So he starts here in 13 and he says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. The important thing to notice right away about this is those first two words, is a statement of reality. It's, again, a statement of identity. It's a statement of being. This is what we are. He's not saying you might be salt or you should be salt, or maybe if you try hard enough, you will become salt. He's talking to this group of disciples. Remember, there's this large crowd that have gathered around, but then his disciples kind of drawn close, and he's directing his words to his disciples. He's saying, you are this. You are salt. Which sounds a little weird, right? I don't believe that I am salt. I am a human being. I am not Lot's wife. I didn't get turned into a pillar of salt or something, and I don't desire to be turned into a pillar of salt. After, I work hard in the yard or something, if I lick my arm, I taste a little salty. I don't know if that's what he's talking about, but it's not what he's talking about here. He's not saying that we are physical salt. So what is he saying? Well, first of all, it's important to know that the word you here is a plural you, not a singular you. In English, we use you for both you and you, right? It's the same thing. If we were in the South, we might say you, and then we'd say y'all, or all y'all, right? But we don't usually use that, and we definitely, translators don't typically put all y'all in here, but it is all y'all. That's what this is. You all are the salt of the earth. In the first century, the salt was really, it served two functions. One is it flavored things, which we can relate to, right? That's how it functions in our world. We put a little salt on something to bring out the flavor of it. But it was also used to preserve food. Because if you can imagine, first century, there's no electricity, there's no refrigeration, there's no ice. So in order to preserve foods, it had to be packed with salt. That's how it kept food from spoiling. It was an essential part of the culture at that time as far as food was concerned. If you did not have salt, you had bland, spoiled food, is what you had. And so it made a huge impact in their world. It was the way that they kind of, preserved their food and kept their food good and tasty. But it also has a pretty huge effect on our world. I don't know if you know it, but 85% of the food you consume has salt in it of some sort. 85%. Like no salt, and that makes a huge difference in our world, in the foods that we consume. I think we would have a very, very bland world without salt. And our foods definitely wouldn't be preserved as well as they are with the salt that we have. So his point here is that salt makes a big impact. And it makes a big impact on the earth, because we are the salt of the earth. We are the salt of the world. Now, this word earth can mean the physical earth, like the little blue marble, right, that we stand on. It can mean that, but it more often means the occupants of the earth, the occupants of the world, humanity, people. And that's what he's talking about here. We are the salt of this world, the people in this world, the inhabitants of this world. See, God's people, again, this is not something we have to try to attain to or try to reach. We have to somehow improve our impact. We simply do impact our world just by who we are. Christians have always impacted the world. Christians have always changed the world, transformed the world. They've transformed others in relationships and in communities and in cities and in nations. They've changed whole destinies of peoples. And if you look back at history, they've changed history. You cannot look at the history of the world in the last 2,000 years and not see the impact of Christianity. And not Christianity, the religion of Christianity. That's not what this is. But the impact of Christians, individual believers and groups of believers who changed the world. And they did, and they do, and we do. We just make an impact. And it's not through some program that we have an impact. It's not through some sort of training we get, although not that these things are bad, but it's simply because of who we are. You are the salt. We are that. We make a difference. We make a difference in Red Bluff. We make a difference in our neighborhoods here in Red Bluff. We make a difference in Tehama County, and we just make a difference. Just by being who God has made us to be. But there's a catch. Because the very next word is but, right? But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. So he's continuing with this salt analogy, this salt metaphor. Again, we're not really salt. He's just comparing us to salt and what salt does and the impact that salt has. And he says, if salt has become tasteless, that word tasteless is interesting because it only occurs in the New Testament 4 times. Twice it's translated as tasteless. Here and another passage which is a reference to the same statement Jesus made. But 2 other times in the New Testament, it's translated as foolish. Tasteless, foolish. How do those things relate? How do you get from the same Greek word both tasteless and foolish? That, I don't know, I don't see a relationship. I don't know. Until you look at really what the word is. See, these are the two places where it occurs. It says, where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? It's that word foolish there. And in Romans chapter 1, which is a great chapter, it's a hard chapter, but it describes humanity to a T. Paul spends the second half of Romans chapter 1 just describing us as people, as humanity. And every time I read it, I'm like, yep, that's us, yep. You can just look in the news, that's us. And he makes this statement right in the middle of that. He says, professing to be wise, talking about us, professing to be wise, they became fools. This word, it doesn't actually mean tasteless or foolish directly. What it means is for something to lose the thing that it is, the thing that makes it what it is. It's the removal of what makes that thing the thing. So in this case, he's saying God has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world. He's taken the wisdom of the world and he sucked all the wise out of it. Right? What's wisdom that has all the wise sucked out of it? It's foolishness, right? That's what it is. Professing to be wise, they became fools. Someone who is wise, who's got all the wisdom sucked out of them, they are a fool, right? They've lost the thing that makes it the thing. We have when we have dinner at our house, which is rare these days because we're super busy. But when we do have dinner at our house, we have some sodas out in the garage. And usually someone will be like, "Hey, can I get you a soda?" And they go out and they get sodas for people. And imagine if I told Clark, "Hey, Clark, go get me a Coke." And he comes in with a Coke can and he hands it to me and it's empty. Like, what is this? And he's like, "Yeah, it's a Coke." No, it's not. Well, look, it says Coke. It looks like a Coke. Yeah, but you drank my Coke. Like, you sucked what makes the Coke a Coke. This is not a Coke. Go get me a Coke, right? Who cares what the can says? You've taken the essence, the wonderful essence of what's in there out, right? It's not what it is. And that's the idea here. If the salt has become tasteless, if the salt is no longer salty, if it's lost the essence of what it is, what practical use is it? If I had chicken for dinner, at this dinner that Clark brought me an empty can of soda, and I had a bite of it and it was kind of bland, which wouldn't happen if Melissa was cooking it because she's an amazing cook. If I was cooking it, it'd probably be a little bland, right? But if I'm eating that, it's a little bland, and I grab the table salt and I shake a little bit on there, and then I take another bite, and there's no difference. And then I go back and I shake a little bit more on there, and I take a little bite, and there's no difference. And now I'm frustrated, and I grab that salt shaker, and I actually take the top off, and I'm just piling salt. I'm caking my chicken with salt, and I take a bite, and I put it in my mouth, and there's no difference. What good is that salt? It's useless. Completely and utterly useless. Might as well not have even put the salt on. And then how can it be made salty again? Now, don't push this illustration too far. Sometimes we look at metaphors and we kind of push the metaphor too far because you might do the math and you're like, wait, I'm the salt of the earth. That's like a disciple, a follower of Christ, and the salt becomes tasteless, but it can't be made salty again, so I'm not a disciple anymore, and I can't become a disciple anymore. No, that's not what he's saying. Don't push the metaphor where it doesn't go. He's just simply saying, salt that isn't salty, how do you make it salty? Do you get another thing of salt and like season this salt with some other salt? No, you don't do that. Just toss the other salt away and use the salt that works. That kind of salt's no good for anything. So his point here is, his metaphor here is for us, that in order for salt to be useful, it must be salty, right? And in order for disciples to be useful, or Christians, we don't really use the term disciple anymore, we use Christians. In order for Christians to be useful, they need to be Christian-y, right? That's what they need to be. We need to act like the people we are. We need to be this spiritual nation of God and be the people that we are. So the point on your handout, first point on your handout, if you want to fill it in, is God's people are to the world around them like salt is to food. Anybody feel like we're taking SATs right now? God's people are to the world like salt is to food, yeah. God's people are to the world around them like salt is to food. He goes on, throws out another metaphor. You are the light of the world. Again, this is all y'all. You all are the light of the world. Light is one of those things, if you haven't really thought much about this, I think about weird things, so I've thought about this, but light is one of those things that is absolutely essential to life. Absolutely essential. If you do not have light, you cannot see. You have no sight. And how detrimental is it for someone not to have sight? It's a big deal. Light is huge. I think I recognize it even more. I think we all can recognize it even more after this whole power outage thing, right? Don't have any light in your house, no power, not fun, not good, not helpful. My mom actually I think she was driving from Cottonwood down south on I-5, and she said she had almost gotten completely through Red Bluff before she realized she was in a town. Because it was so pitch black. I mean, you guys know if you drove around during that time, I mean, there was just you couldn't see anything. It's pitch black. Didn't even know, she's like going out of town, she's like, oh, I guess that was Red Bluff that I just passed, right? Light's important. And we are the light of the world. He says, a city on a hill cannot be hidden. That should be an obvious statement to us. This is a city that was built on a hill. I believe it's pronounced Gourdes, France. Might be Gordis, France. I don't know. I'm going to say Gourdes. This is Gourdes, France. This town built on a hill, you drive for miles, you can see this town, right? Because it's up there. If you tried to hide this town, anybody got a good solution on how to hide this town? You don't want people to see it? It's not going to happen. There's no cloaking device. It's there. At night, it's even more prominent, right? You're like, can't miss that. As a contrast, this is Petra in the modern day Jordan. This is a city that actually was settled in like 9th century BC, and it was flourished for hundreds of years. And then the civilization kind of collapsed and people left. And this city was actually lost for like 1,000 years. People didn't even know where it was, had no clue where this place was until some Swiss guy discovered it, found it. But if you look, you can kind of see why. It's situated in a canyon. That would be hard to see, hard to find. You might fly over that and not see it. You might walk by it or ride by it on a camel or something and not see it because it's hidden, hard to see. This is obviously a city that when they were building it, they were thinking, we kind of want to be a little concealed. We kind of want to be incognito. Gourds, they're like, like, hey, we want everybody to see where we're at, right? No one was building this city and going, maybe people won't know where we are. We'll keep this thing a secret. No, they weren't thinking that. And so he's using this illustration for us to understand that this is also us. We're a city meant to be built on a hill. It's obvious. He goes on, he says, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket. You don't turn a lamp on and then cover it up with a blanket or put some sort of covering over it. What's the point of that? No one would do that. The point of turning on a light is to bring light to the room. Why would you cover that up and have no light? In fact, when you moved into your home, you probably placed some lamps around your house and you were strategic about how you did that, right? Part of it might have been aesthetics, like I think it looks good there, but you were definitely thinking about it bringing light to the room. You wouldn't put it somewhere that you go, that's aesthetically pleasing, but it's going to provide no light to the room. No. A lamp's meant to provide light to the room. That's the point of it. In order for it to be useful, it needs to be set out. And in this time period, in this illustration, he says it needs to be put up on a lampstand, which is basically what it sounds like. It's a stand that you put a lamp on, right? It just raises it up so it can light the room better. And it gives light to all who are in the house. Because most of their houses were 1 or 2 room houses, so it gave light to the whole house. Might be a little different in our house. We need multiple lamps, right? In that same way, for us, we can hide or obscure our nationality, right? Our being a part of the spiritual people of God. I'm a total nerd, so I thought about Star Trek. Any Star Trek fans out there? Star Trek 4, they go back in time, and Spock is trying to hide that he's an alien, and he has those pointy ears, So he puts on this bandana to cover up his pointy ears, right? He didn't want people to know that he was a Vulcan. They wouldn't even know what that was. He didn't want them to know he was an alien. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a mortuary called Ross, Burke and Noble. It was basically just me and the manager of the mortuary. The two of us worked there. And we got in a conversation one day. We got in a lot of conversations. There was a lot of downtime there. And got in a conversation one day. This was a guy who was wasn't married, had been married and been divorced, and was living with his girlfriend at this point. And we were having this conversation, and he was kind of a nominal Catholic, and he said, I think what God really cares about is that that when we're with someone, we're committed to them when we're with them. That's what he really cares about. And I just kind of nodded, And then he totally gave me an opening. He's like, what do you think, Nate? Opportunity galore for me just to say the truth, right? But I said, yeah, sounds about right. I had an opportunity to be who I was. I knew the truth. But I don't know why I did that. I probably just didn't want to have the conversation. I just didn't want to deal with it. Didn't want him to be upset with me if I contradicted him. I don't know. But I covered it up. Put my light under a basket. So just being who I was. The point on your handout is God's people are to the world around them like light is to darkness. SAT question number 2. God's people are to the world around them like light is to darkness. So far, Jesus is being very abstract, right? Being very metaphoric. Well, he finishes this off being very practical, very specific. And he says this, let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. So what is light? What is salt? He makes it very, very clear here. It's living out good works, good actions, right actions. And it's important to understand, because I feel like the word good we have misused and manipulated over the years. And what many people call good is not good, right? This is good as God defines goodness. Truly good works. Salt is salty, right? Christians do good. That's what they do. Disciples of Christ, followers of Christ, they do good. They live lives that bring glory to God. That's who we are. Light is bright. It shines. Christians don't hide who their Lord is. They don't hide what people they are a part of. They display their true character. Believers just simply act and speak and think and live differently than the rest of the world. They have different passions, different priorities, different marriages, different parenting styles. They use their money differently. Everything about them is different. Everything about us is different. Now, can believers be unmerciful? Yes, they can. But they lose their impact when they are. We lose our impact when we are. I showed that statement last week of that prominent Christian leader in the 80s who basically said, it's good that people are dying from AIDS. What? Unmerciful. We lose our impact. Can believers be contentious? Yeah. But we lose our effectiveness when we are. Can we bow to social pressure? Sure. But we lose our distinctiveness when we do that. So he's saying, let your light shine. Let your true character shine out. Be you. Be who I've made you to be. And not so that you're glorified, not so that other people will go, oh man, Nate's such a great guy. Oh man, that Grace Community Church, man, they're such nice people. So that he will be glorified. So that they will turn and glorify their Father, your Father who is in heaven. And again, it's important to understand that he's talking to the group, right? Because honestly, people can look at one person and just go, and they can ignore him and go, oh, that's a one-off thing. That's just a unique kind of person. Or even a few people and go, you know, they're all from the same family. They must have been raised right. Or, you know, sometimes good friends start to become like each other or whatever, and that's just a unique situation. But 5, 10, dozens, 100 people who are all living as differently as we're called to live, as differently as who we are, you can't deny that. And it's much harder for you to just isolate that and go, that's just them, or that's from them. You got to go, something's up with that group of people. Something's different about them. Aren't they like Christians? Maybe that Jesus guy has something to do with that. Maybe God's involvement in their lives is making the difference there. It's what we're called to. That's who we are. Keep in mind, we are salt. We are light. Can we lose our saltiness? Sure we can. Can we hide our light? Sure we can. It's not who we are. The point on your handout is God's people, living as God's people. I mistyped that. Impact other people for God. Do you have the word live on your handout? Whoops. Okay, sorry. God's people, living as God's people, impact other people for God's glory. People are all your blanks. God's people, living as God's people, impact other people for God's glory. Just be who you are. We need to be who we are as a group. All right, bottom of your handout. Just read this. As citizens of the kingdom of heaven, we were made to make an impact on this world. That is who we are. When we choose to hide our nationality, we lose our impact. When our actions don't reflect who our Father, the King, is, we become ineffective. We are called to live bright and salty, make an impact, and make God look good. Are you living openly as a citizen of heaven, as the citizen of heaven that you are? In what ways might you be minimizing your impact? Let me pray for us. Lord, we truly do just want to live out who we are. We want to be real with people. There's plenty of pressures around us that will want us not to live the way that you've made us to live, to hide our dedication to you, because we're afraid of people's opinions. We're afraid of their contempt of us if we live like you've called us to live like you've made us to live. But God, give us boldness to just be who we are, to stand in the midst of a dark world and shine. Shine your light. Not for applause, not for pats on the back, but so that people think well of you. Pray this all in your name. Amen. We're dismissed.